Hello and welcome to Onion Unlimited, the show where we peel back the layers of life and explore the big questions. I'm your host, Daniel Torridon, and I am joined today by the Reverend John Polk. Good morning, John.
Hey, good afternoon on the other side of the world.
Whereabouts are you, John? You're in America somewhere?
I'm in Sedona, Arizona.
Sedona, Arizona. Very nice. Yeah, so we've caught you in the evening. Your day's almost finishing. Mine's just beginning. So it's brilliant to have you on the show. Just a quick introduction for you, for our listeners this morning or this evening. Your bio on Twitter mentions UFO Vortex Tour Guide. We'll have a little chat about that in Sedona. Blue Beings at UFO Conference. Ancient Aliens, quite interested in that one. You're a ghost hunter, a medium, a Reiki master, and also a metaphysical minister. So I've not come across that before, a metaphysical minister. Can you just talk about that for a moment? Your reverendship, your minister, is it the regular kind of? The only ministers I'm sort of used to are the Church of England type, and I'm guessing that's probably not you.
Well, here in Sedona, we approach the ministry a little differently. At least I do.
Yeah.
So it was back in 2007. A girlfriend who lived with me, and at night she was studying to be an international metaphysical minister.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd lay in bed at night and just go over core studies. And once I learned the relative vernacular and the language, I was getting all the answers right without reading the book.
Right.
And so she moved on and I moved on, and years removed, in 2011, I wanted to go back to school, and I decided, why not do the same thing she did? So I got a bachelor's in metaphysics from the University of Sedona before I had any clue I was going to move here. And then I got a ministry also as a non-secular, non-denominational, international metaphysical minister from the University of Sedona.
Brilliant. That's fantastic. So a metaphysical minister. I love that. That is brilliant. And you are also a published author. I've just been reading your book that I particularly wanted to just have a chat with you about this morning, entitled Yahweh, the Biblical God Is An Alien. I'm going to put a link in the description below so people can purchase that if they want to have a read. Now, the reason this really appealed to me, John, is I've had, for a long time, I've had this feeling that when it comes to God or gods, not necessarily just Yahweh, but gods in general, something happened in the dim and distant past that left some kind of indelible impression on humans. By that I mean some kind of sort of interaction with something that they may have thought was a god or gods, but maybe wasn't. And I started thinking, I wonder if like these interactions were kind of alien in nature. And by that I don't mean spirit beings as such. I mean, literal physical kind of entities like ourselves, maybe a bit more technologically advanced, from other planets, maybe even other galaxies. And I got to thinking, I wonder if Yahweh was an alien. So I went and did a little bit of Googling on the internet, and lo and behold, I came across your book, Yahweh. Yahweh.
A lot of people do.
Yeah. Now, the thing that really got me hooked is I've thought maybe Yahweh was an alien past tense, and that Yahweh is dead. Okay, so there's no Yahweh anymore. He existed once, but he's now dead. But your book is Yahweh Is An Alien, which suggests to me that Yahweh still exists. Am I on the right line?
I believe so. And let's say I'm wrong. So let me go here and give my disclaimer.
Please, yeah.
So the material that we are going to cover this morning in Australia and this afternoon here in Mountain Time, Arizona, Sedona.
Yep.
I don't have all the answers for everything.
Sure.
I do UFO tours for a living.
Mhm.
I am a very, very well-versed theologian. I study world religions. I have for decades since I was a teenager. So I don't have all the correct answers.
Yeah.
And a lot of the original research was wrong in the first place. You
Right.
know, for example, there are 50 plus different versions and translations of the King James Bible.
Mm.
So if there's 50, you got to figure every one of them has some incorrect information in it.
Yep.
Every one of them. And
Yep.
if you go back to the Aramaic, which it was written in Aramaic in the first place, thousands of years ago, those translations look totally different than the original Aramaic that that we are not exposed to.
Mhm.
Same thing with the Hebrew Bible. You go back and read it in Hebrew,
Yep.
which I don't know how to do, but there's books that show the different interpretations of Aramaic to Latin to English to ancient Hebrew to current Hebrew, and those books read very differently
Yeah.
than our current ideologies and modalities contained within the doctrines of what we call religion. So that being said, I'm not right about everything. I do UFO tours for a living also. I'm not right about everything. I talk about that either.
Yep.
But the fact that I can at least admit it,
Yeah.
give me some credibility.
Yep.
I have found mistakes. I've found mistakes that I have made and put them online and said, look at the spaceship. And then I find out it's a blimp or something.
Yeah. And that's,
what do you do?
That's the thing, isn't it? It's about being, if you're searching for truth, a lot of times it is, I've discovered, it is about peeling away those layers of things that are not true to find the actual kernel of truth kind of in the center of that somewhere. And sometimes, like you say, I've had to do the same. I've kind of formulated a view on something, and then a bit further down the line, I've tweaked it a bit. Interesting you say about the Bible there, different versions of the Bible and so on. I'm absolutely certain that we can't look at the Bible and say that it's 100% correct across the board.
I think we can all agree on that.
I think we can agree on that. But the thing that leads me to think that there's something true in some of these stories is that it's not just the Bible. You've also got your Sumerian accounts, Babylonian accounts, quite often of some of these patriarchs, for example, that lived for thousands of years, or some of these stories about angels coming and mating with human women, that kind of thing. The fact it's from these different cultures that seemingly aren't connected to each other seems to suggest to me there's at least a kernel of truth in there somewhere.
I would agree.
Yeah.
I would agree. Just like with a lot of mythology, I like to think that at least a core of it is true, and then hyperbole, sensationalism, everybody's a journalist. Oral, sending something through the generations orally, it's going to twist through the grapevine every time you tell the story again.
Yep.
But that being said, if we can go back to your original question, yes, I think Yahweh is still alive.
Right. Why would you say that he's still alive? Have you had any sort of personal kind of revelations or anything to that effect?
Okay, so getting back to my disclaimer, so what I do believe is that, and I do believe in reincarnation.
Mm-hmm.
I do believe in reincarnation. Not that I'm just going to come back as a white male in this kind of reality on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
I believe I've been a Pleiadian, an Arcturian, a Venusian, a Martian, an Andromedan. But I do believe that Yahweh is still alive. At least his consciousness is, and that it still permeates the psyche of this planet. For forever, for all millennia. So yes, and is there cores of truth to all of the Bible stories? I would like to think there's some, because like you said, there's a lot of overlap in the Sumerian epics as well.
Yeah, that seems very reasonable. We've just been joined actually on the live stream on the chat by Scott R. Jones. I had Scott on the show the other day, and he's got a book coming out in the summer called Drill, and it's the basic idea of the book is that Yahweh, or Jehovah, whatever you want to call him, is a mimetic entity, in that it's because we think of Yahweh, and particularly because some religions spend a lot of time praying to Yahweh, that somehow this kind of idea, almost, whether you want to call it a conscious entity or what, kind of takes root, that Yahweh is basically dependent upon the energy that we give it. And if we were to kind of just stop thinking about Yahweh, he'd kind of sort of filter off into nothing. I don't know what your thoughts are on that at all.
I couldn't disagree with him. Now, is he physically alive? That's debatable. Is he mimetic? Well, that's debatable too. Let's say, for argument's sake, that let's perhaps say he's both. Let's say he's both.
That's possible.
That his soul lives on whether he's physically alive or not. And we talked about this prior to the show about a week ago. Since we pray to him and give our souls away to him, and all religions do that, they all want your soul, because these creator God aliens who theoretically created us to worship them. They created us to worship them so that they can gain our prayer energy, and we give them our souls. In this incarnate physical being, we give them our souls as we go into the afterlife. So where do you think your soul's going to go when you die, since you just gave it away to an extraterrestrial?
That is brilliant. That's brilliant. Now, like when a light bulb goes on, yeah, or a set of chakras above my head. Look, you've just answered a question I've been wondering for some time. So I've been thinking, when there was a Yahweh and it was an alien entity, physical or whatever, but then it's dead. I was kind of working on the basis once it's dead, it's gone. It no longer exists. But that's exactly right, what you've just said, because I also think that when I'm dead, I don't stop existing. I continue on in some form. So even if Yahweh was a physical entity of some kind, an alien or some form of higher life, and then it died in a physical sense, it could actually still exist in almost like a soul level. So there could still be a kind of ripple of Yahweh out there that it's possible to pray to, give your energy to. Now, in your book, you actually mentioned that you're able to channel Yahweh. Very interested in that. Could you give me a little bit more background on that one?
So there's a lot to it, but I told you a very most important part of it. We pray to him, and he gains our prayer energy, and then we give him our soul, right?
Yeah.
Imagine this. You're a rapist and a murderer of children. You're laying on your deathbed. You knew you were a piece of garbage your whole life. You hurt so many people. Now you repent. And now you're going to go to heaven. What do you have to do? You have to give your soul to Yahweh.
Yep. So Yahweh is not a good entity? Yahweh is a bad entity? Or
I don't think so. So, kill the firstborn Egyptian sons in the plagues of Egypt. Kill the firstborn Egyptian sons, murder children.
Yeah.
That was an order. That was an order from Yahweh to slaughter children. And he didn't know which ones were the Israelites and which ones were the Egyptians. So he had them put X's over the doors in goat blood, because he was an extraterrestrial.
That doesn't sound very much like God, does it? The top God. When you, this was a question that my partner asked last night, Mariella. When you have channeled Yahweh, we're quite keen to know how that works. Have you heard audible voices from Yahweh, or have you seen anything, apparitions, or has it been kind of an internal dialogue? And when you've had those kind of connections with Yahweh, have you felt the negativity from that ET?
So I'm going to say yes to all the above. Okay. So all those different, different potentials, I would have to agree with all of those. Am I right? Am I delusional? Well, that's debatable too. But what I do believe is that, or what I've done through my research, is I have discovered, if the research is even right, that the higher gods rule the lower gods, and the lower gods rule the planets in the underworld. The higher gods rule them. Right. So Yahweh, instead of being very weak, which it's very much a weakness to gain energy from very primitive beings called humans to be able to obtain his greatness, that's what makes him powerful. and other creator God aliens are out there. Well, I got a few billion souls. Well, I got more billion souls than you do. I mean, it's like a game, and it's an ego thing between the creator gods. And they don't just do it on this planet. They did it on Mars too. And they've done it all around the cosmos. So this is not just a new phenomenon either. So what I believe, I can't prove, of course, but I believe that Yahweh, instead of being recognized as one of the lower gods that rules the planets and the underworld, he wants to be acknowledged as one of the higher gods who rules the lower gods. He wants to be part of that council. So I went to a regression therapist, and what she saw, and this is just what she saw Yahweh as this almost reptilian-like being with wings flying, and it has this chain attached to its ankle, and then the rest of the chain is connected to earth, like he's trying to fly away. That he knows that using us and deceiving us to gain our prayer energy and to gain our souls for his own selfish purposes, right? That's making him weak, and he wants to evolve beyond that. So that's one of my heavy downloads.
I get that. So initially Yahweh started off kind of using our prayer energy, but it's kind of got to the point where he can't evolve to the next stage with us. He needs to kind of get rid of us now and move on somewhere else. I mean, that might even explain to me one of the things I've questioned about before in the past. In the Bible, particularly the early part of the Bible, you've got all these very explicit accounts of Yahweh interacting with people, and it kind of tails off a bit. You know, once you get to sort of halfway through the Bible, he's not kind of doing the whole, Red Sea miracles and the burning. I mean, do you think that was Yahweh the alien, for example, behind the burning bush story? If that happened.
In my mind, I think that was something technological.
Could have been technological.
That we didn't have the vernacular. We didn't have the vocabulary to explain what we saw or what they saw. So the best way to rationalize that in their mind was to explain it in a way that they could understand it. And so, it may have come, visually in the form of a tree or a bush, but I think it was something technological, because the Ark of the Covenant would communicate with the high priests also. Supposedly like the walkie-talkie to Yahweh anyway, and that thing killed people left and right too. Yeah,
and then you've got things that we might identify today as aircraft or spaceships or whatever, and the only way they can describe it is like a chariot with wings on or that kind of thing. They're using their own vernacular to sort of make sense of it. That makes a lot of sense. So you think that Yahweh, we're on the same page there. Yahweh is an alien entity of some kind, and even if he's sort of moved between physical and spirit or interdimensional or other galaxies or whatever, he's definitely not God, the very top God.
Well, and the very top god of that council is an extraterrestrial also. So what I tell people is that all the biblical figures appeared in physical form. That means that they're not ethereal beings. They had a physical body. They appear, even the archangels, which I call the arch-aliens. And so what I do believe is that the God consciousness, and that's the key to metaphysics as a metaphysical minister, your God self, your God mind, your God power, the universal God consciousness, right?
Right.
And so I believe that there is a universal God consciousness, but the ETs know that we're looking for the universal God consciousness, and they're posing as that universal God consciousness so that we pray to them as opposed to the real source. And so I always tell people that work with archangels, yes, they're powerful, but why limit yourself? Why go through the ET when the Archangel Michael consciousness is very real? The Archangel Gabriel consciousness is very real. All the Elohim, which is plural for gods, not just one. Okay, Elohim is a plural word. Those were all ETs, and they're basically the middlemen between source. So why go through them to get to source when we have the ability to go to source ourselves? And we all do. We're just not taught that. Go to church, see what they teach you there.
Yeah. Yeah, no, right. So again, yeah, I think we're on the same page here. So yeah, I've kind of thought for some time now. I mean, I used to be. I've told you on our private chat. I used to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses. So Jehovah, obviously, Yahweh, Jehovah, same guy. So I spent my entire life kind of praying to Yahweh, and I'm not a Jehovah's Witness now. I saw the flaws in that. I don't want to be a religious person anymore. I now think of source as being the kind of the ultimate reality from which everything is manifest, and these Yahweh. You've mentioned the various different angels and so forth. They're all kind of creations that are manifest from source. Now you're actually taking that kind of almost like in a hierarchical side of things. You're saying that the Yahweh God and the angels and all these what we think of as spirits, are actually ETs, and they're being manifest from source. But then these ETs are responsible for our creation. Am I understanding that correct?
Yes, and what I believe in the quantum hologram matrix, which implies it's string theory, where we exist in all dimensions simultaneously.
Okay,
we have a God. We have a God self or a soul, and it's omnipotent, just like source is omnipotent. So since we have part of that omnipotence within us, which means we exist in all dimensions simultaneously, if the source does, then we do too, through our God self, right? And so in another dimension, Daniel, you're a creator God alien on another planet where they worship Daniel or whoever you want to be called. And that's not the only planet you've done it on. It's a mission. You do it on a bunch of different planets to gain as many souls as possible. And that's part of the maturation of a creator God alien. You can't, just like Freemasonry, you got to go through all the steps to get to 33 Scottish Free Rite Mason, right? Mm-hmm. You have to do the rituals. You got to go through all that. You have to go through the highs and the lows, the good and the less than good, to be able to become one with source. And so I believe that in another dimension, I'm a creator God alien, and so are you, and so is everybody else. And if you're not one in this dimension and multiple dimensions simultaneously, then you have in the past or you will in the future.
Right. Okay. That sounds fairly reasonable to me. What I'm trying to just get my head around is the idea. So am I right? Me right here now, Daniel sitting here. Am I an ET that's manifesting as a human, or am I just a human?
You know what? You are whatever you want yourself to be. You are only limited by your own consciousness.
Right.
So since there is no limit to your consciousness, then there's no limits, period. You are the universe. And so am I.
I believe that.
And so is everybody else. So I'm not special just because I at least think I'm getting these downloads. I'm not the only one.
But I've not. So what you're saying is I've not. So even if at this moment in time, I'm just identifying as a human, at some point in the dim past, or some point into the future, I have been or will be of alien nature. Because it's not so much about the body, it's about the actual God consciousness within you that's moving around the universe.
Yeah, so let's say in this dimension, in this meat suit, I'm a Homo sapien sapien. Let's say in the fifth dimension, I'm a Pleiadian. Let's say in the seventh dimension, I'm an Arcturian. Let's say in the ninth dimension, I'm an Andromedan. Now, what I try to do, and I believe I'm able to do it, is to remote view my other selves through myself.
Oh, right. Yeah.
You want to get deep. So imagine this, Daniel, you're on another planet, okay? And you try and make it as real as possible. You try to go through all your senses and make it as real as humanly possible. And you look at your hand and you don't have an opposable thumb. You have 3 or 4 fingers and your skin is more blue. Mm-hmm. You don't have any hair on your arms. You look up at the sky, Daniel, and you see 3 big moons. Now you definitely know you're on another planet.
Yeah.
You look down at your feet and they don't look human either. You wiggle your toes in the sand and you feel the terrestrial planet. You feel yourself breathing in the air. Yes,
Yeah, I get
ever
it.
heard of synesthesia, where you can
Yeah, I've actually
hear
got that.
what you feel and see what you hear, and you go through all your senses and try and make it as real as possible. So I remotely view my higher concentric multidimensional selves, them through me and me through them. So
I've
we
got.
all have higher selves, and our higher selves know all about this very primitive self down here. But we
Yeah, I know, I've got it. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. I'm just
no,
really,
no, yeah, do it,
really
brother, do it.
excited here. So it's right. So in terms of dimensions, all of these dimensions exist at the same time. So like for example, I've got a 2-dimensional piece of paper here at the moment. That's below me. So I'm in the 3rd dimension. I'm able to observe that piece of paper. Yeah.
Yeah.
When the dimensions go up, so you go 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, each time you go up a dimension, I'm still me, but it's like I'm observing me in a lower form and then me in a lower form. It's going all the way up like that, up to however many dimensions it would be, but it's the same me through that whole experience.
That's exactly what I believe. So let's extrapolate that. Now you're remote
Gotcha.
viewing your higher self, you're remote viewing through your higher self, and now you're in the corner of your studio watching you sip on a cup of Joe right now.
Onion Unlimited mug. Yep.
Yeah. And so, like I said, your higher self is very concerned about your lower self because what we do affects them and they
Yep.
know it and we don't really understand it. So guess who one of your most powerful guardian angels is?
Go on. Me.
You. Yeah, you in a higher dimension. And yeah, we have other spirits and other entities, and a lot of what we think are ghosts, because I do ghost tours too, are actually extra dimensionals where they have consciousness. They don't have a physical body, at least in this density and in this dimension, but they're very real. I can feel them, I can see them. Not everybody can, but I teach workshops on how to do this, how to see your other higher concentric multidimensional selves and other entities as well, because they can influence our behavior. That's for sure. They can influence our thoughts, our emotions, our actions.
That's
So, I mean, I'm
interesting.
from Florida. It's like, how do I end up in Sedona, Arizona, and I'm the biggest UFO guy in perhaps the southwestern United States? A million little things had to happen for me to come here. Millions of little subtle nuances, all these meticulous little tiny little details and weird things happened to me in my life for me to land in Sedona and have all the career opportunities that I do now. And I really believe that a big part of it is from my connection
To your
with
higher
source,
self. Yep.
but then all the beings between me and source also.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah, and that's just sort of clarified something. Give me something different to think about there. So let me just get this bit right as well. You refer to these. So you've obviously got source, which is like potential for everything that's manifesting everything into existence. And then you've got like these various different sort of layers and dimensions coming all the way down. I guess what I would call the soul, I think what you're referring to as the God consciousness, is that coming from, say, the creator deity that made this instance of me, or is that God consciousness coming directly from source?
Great question. So what I believe is that it could be all the above, but one potential is that source, of course, is our soul, but maybe Yahweh hijacked it along the way down.
Right. Using something that already exists.
Yeah. So have you ever heard of VMAT number 2?
No.
VMAT number 2 is the God gene. So Dr. Dean Hamer back in 2005 discovered the God gene called VMAT number 2, which is vesicular monoamine transporter number 2.
Right. Yes, I have, because it's in your book. I was
I
reading
talk
about that
it
the other
on my
night. Yeah.
vortex. I talk about it on my vortex tours that the Native Americans, they didn't know Jesus. They didn't know Yahweh. They didn't know religion. They knew the four winds. You know what I'm saying? They knew the rain gods. They knew the red rocks, and they worshiped the red rocks. They believed that they were sentient, that they had consciousness. And what that is, and so therefore they deified them and worshiped them. But what I'm getting at, it's built into our DNA. And if you look at a strand of DNA, human DNA, there's a couple curious parts of it. You'll see HAR1, which makes us different than chimpanzees. We're within 2 or 3% of DNA with chimpanzees. Okay. Then you'll have the Fox gene, which gives us our voice box. We're the only animal on the planet that has one like that. And if you look at the double helix, it looks like something was just grafted into it, right? HAR1 and also VMAT number 2, vesicular monoamine transporter number 2. So you have the double helix, the spiral staircase, but then you'll see some lines in it. And those lines look like they were artificially implanted when they created the human species, as these creator God aliens do.
Right. So it may be a case of the basic sort of framework physically of what we are, humanoid, great apes, whatever, already existed in some form. And then they've kind of basically genetically engineered what was already there to be more, I don't know, worshipful, more spiritual, more...
Well, how about more obedient? So
yeah, that's good. Yeah, more obedient. Yeah, I like that.
Because really, religion, let me tell you what religion actually means. So religion is a Latin word which comes from the Latin verb religere, if I'm even saying that right, RELIGARE, to tie back, to hold back, to thwart from forward progress, to bind. A system of control based in unchallenged dogmatic belief, which holds back the progress of consciousness. That is the literal translation in Latin of what the word religion means.
Well, you've just gone and described the religion that I belonged to in the past.
You that guy knocking on my door the other day? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, no, I did that for
just 5 minutes of your time.
Yeah, I did that for 50 years, trying to infect other people with the parasite within.
That's great.
So I've had a little bit of experience with channeling. Back in 2006, I actually found myself writing a book which was entitled "I Am God." Looks something like that. There was a little bit in the book I read last night. It said, so this is not me speaking, this is just what was coming to me, and I was just writing it down as it came to me. God, Allah, Yahweh, Jehovah, Jesus, Spirit, Truth, Love, Light. These are but descriptions of my manifestations. Put these aside, they're not important at this time. How does that...
Wow, put those aside.
Just put them aside for this time. They are not important at this time. And then it just says, I am God.
You know what? I think they're waiting for you to interview me and then go back and read it again.
Because I know throughout your book, I'm sort of gradually getting through the book. I've not read it all the way through yet because this interview came about literally just a couple of days after I started reading it. But you do talk about Allah, you talk about Yahweh, you also talk about Jesus as being of an ET nature. That makes sense to me now. So Jesus is various different dimensions again. You also talk about angels in your book. So you've got like Gabriel, Michael, Raphael, all aliens.
Yeah, all the L's. You've heard that term, the L's. Their last or all their names end in EL.
As in the Canaanite god El that later got conflated with Yahweh eventually with the
Yeah, and so there's a translation in the term angel. What it actually means is messenger. That's what it means. It means messenger. So one who conveys information from party A to party B. And like I said, it's just a basic mistranslation. Angels. You
Yeah.
know, do they serve a purpose? Absolutely. Are they real? Well, they're real extraterrestrials that call themselves angels. That's what I believe.
Yep.
Do they come from source? I believe so.
Yep.
Is there Christ consciousness? I believe so.
Yep.
Jesus works in my life. He used to drink every day and hang out with the peasants, but in the end, he'd heal people, you know. So his heart was in the right place too. But
So,
that being said,
mm,
I've been told and received information, whether I'm right or not, that he was potentially Venusian or potentially Pleiadian.
okay.
And have you heard of Moroni? Moroni?
I've heard of Moroni. I don't know what that is. I've also heard of Pleiades. I know there used to be a lot of speculation that Pleiades could actually be the actual center of where God himself lived, or where Yahweh lived.
What's interesting about Pleiades in the middle of Mesoamerica, where the Maya were doing blood sacrifice rituals, their villages mirror exactly all the stars, not just the seven sisters, but all the stars of the Pleiades.
Mm-hmm.
Mathematically perfect.
Okay.
But as with anything else, there's good ETs, and you got to be careful with the terms used. There's good ETs, and there's other ETs. I don't
Yeah.
like to
Yeah.
give certain terms weight,
Mm-hmm.
and that's true throughout, the cosmos.
Well, that's the same with humans, isn't it? I mean, if you're a nasty human, there's probably all possibility that your higher self is also probably not very nice either, and then the next dimension up, still not very nice.
Or let's say this self down here is the malevolent one, and then this one up here is the benevolent one. But not all yourselves are going to just be benevolent. You
Mm.
can't just be benevolent through all your concentric multidimensional
Yeah,
selves.
I suppose things like biology would come into it, wouldn't
There's
it?
no balance that way.
No,
There's no
and
balance that way.
and also biology would come into it as well, because like the actual physical makeup of a person could have some bearing on how they reflect the God consciousness, good or badly. That's also something I've thought of in the past. So we've even got like characters like Noah, Abraham, Jesus, of course. Some of these Bible characters that we read about, that some of these patriarchs, Noah and Abraham, they also could be kind of multi-dimensional, and they are essentially all ET as well, the same as we are.
I believe so. And so let's extrapolate everything we've been talking about now. Pardon me. So what I believe a lot of the biblical figures are, and this is very debatable, but I believe that a lot of them are Anunnaki. Those from who from the heavens came to earth, the Anunnaki, that theoretically came from the planet Nibiru.
Okay.
And that they were the ones that posed as these gods that we would deem as gods, or the Elohim, and even the fallen angels. The sons of the gods descended to earth and mated with the daughters of men.
Yep.
Well, guess what? Those were the fallen angels, and angels can't have sex. They're angels if they are angels, and created the Nephilim or the Nephilim, however you want to pronounce it. So there's definitely a human element to them creating us, but they found us attractive and lusted after us and created these hybrids.
Yeah. Right, that makes sense. So there's a lot going on interdimensionally. There's a lot going on hierarchically there, and there's also a bit of genetic advancement going on, or genetic engineering going on. And you're talking about multiple bodies across multiple dimensions, and these are all happening at the same time.
And that's a hard concept to wrap your brain around, because we're not taught that in school, but the dimensions theoretically through string theory mean that one is right on top of the other, but you don't realize that it's there because it's vibrating at a different vibration frequency and a different density that we're not attuned to, and potentially even different laws of physics and other things like that. So where I live in Sedona, what we believe, at least some of us do, is that the dimensions have all come together, and that there's been a tear that has been torn into the fabric of space-time here. And then that's why we're one of the hottest UFO hotspots on the planet.
Yeah, I wanted to move on to the UFOs next, if you've got time for this, John. So you have also got a website, johnpolktours.com. I'll put a link again in the description. So UFO sightings, you actually say on the website, guaranteed to see UFOs or your money back. That's quite a bold claim, I guess you could say.
It is, isn't it?
Has anyone ever asked for a refund?
Never.
Never. Right. So
now I will say we've had weather events that messed it up where you couldn't really see the sky. And in my mind, I'm like, hey, let's do it anyway.
Let's do it anyway.
And if you don't see anything, don't pay me. And most of the time people will pay me something anyway, but I don't, say you have to pay me on a very cloudy night.
Yep.
But that's the only thing. If we have 50% sky, I guarantee it 100%.
You will see.
And every company in Sedona does the same thing.
Right. Let me make a confession here. So I went on the website and I looked at some of the footage of some of the UFOs. I'm going to be dead honest with you here. Right. First of all, I do believe that there are UFOs. I do believe that there's aliens interacting with us. I wasn't 100% convinced with the footage, and I think that comes from maybe a bit of skepticism from my point. The fact that these days you can kind of make anything look real using a bit of Photoshop or whatever. What I actually did last night, I said to Mariella, I'm going to try and make a fake UFO video. So I walked across we've got quite a large yard out the back. I walked across the back of the yard in the dark last night, trying not to get caught by any snakes or anything. And Mariella stood in the house with a video camera on. And I went out and I moved a light around just to see if I could make like a UFO looking video. It didn't work. My video didn't look anything like yours. It just looked like a guy standing in the garden with a torch. So I thought, maybe it's not as easy to do that. And I'm thinking maybe it's not even so much the video footage itself. I think maybe you would have to be there to actually experience it firsthand. Is that fair or?
Agreed. So when I do my UFO tours, and I do a lot of the conferences, most of the conferences in this town, the major ones, I'm the UFO guy for every single one of them.
Right.
And the reason is because I get the most results. And I have the footage to show people. Now, when I show people the footage, you know what I say? Just like I disclaimed myself at the beginning of your show, I say, I'm not right about everything. I will be the first to tell you that. To say I'm right about everything is pretty pompous and arrogant and dogmatic and weak-minded in my mind. Okay. So, have I captured some things that I thought were UFOs and they were probably the military or something explainable? I'm positive I have, but I've never tried to do it on purpose.
Right.
Ever.
And that's the thing. You've not stood out in a field with a mate, a few hundred yards away with a laser pen saying, look.
Well, and anybody that knows me personally knows that computers do not work properly around me whatsoever.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I've got an energy where I go to Walgreens and they're like, oh, God, reboot the computer now.
Yeah. Well, me and my partner, Mariella, have got a thing about the Mercury retrograde. Every time that comes around, our computers stop working, our internet goes down, television won't turn on. It's crazy. Can you have you actually had have you been an abductee at any time, or have you only seen UFOs?
Okay, so let's take a step backwards and use a different term. So abductee is always negative. So let's say I'm a contactee.
Okay.
That can mean anything. Abduction means you were taken against your will.
Right. Yep.
And I'll be honest, I believe that has happened to me. That's for sure. But so when I first moved here from Florida, which is a story in itself, it's amazing how I got here. I used to do entertainment for a living, singing and dancing, not for, but by Disney and Universal in Florida. And then, next thing you know, I'm doing UFO tours in Sedona. That is not the natural maturation of any human on this planet.
Yep.
And so, I'm sorry, what was the question again?
Have you been abducted? But
Yes.
I guess the answer is yes, you have, but it wasn't a negative experience.
So when I moved here, I met a lady, and she was the most powerful spiritual healer I ever met in my life. This little old lady who penciled in her eyebrows, real pretty lady, incredibly powerful. Her name is Thea Ivy. And I had so many people try to regress me through regression therapy, which is debatable if that's even real or not too. And, but in Florida, I had all these people that had been doing it for 20 years and nobody could crack the code. So when I came here, this was the perfect analogy that she came up with, and she was able to do it. And I'll tell you what came out of me after I explained this to you. So what she said was, it was kind of like going to an Airbnb and you go to the lockbox and you got to punch in the code to open up the box and get the key. So when she figured out what the code was, she was able to open up the box and get the key. That was her analogy. I'm like, wow, that was brilliant. And so I'm laying on her table and she's shooting 432 frequency through my body, which is a healing frequency, and I could feel it. And she's going through my chakras and we're, talking about Yahweh and stuff. But then she goes into the regression and I'm laying there and I've done that 20 times before. It's never worked before. And I'm going, all right, this is not working. Next thing you know, it starts flowing out of me. And it's the weirdest thing because you're conscious, but you're not, but you are. So you're listening to yourself talk, but it's not you, but it is. And you have two consciousness going on right now, right? And so what was coming out of me was that supposedly, according to this, that the Anunnaki contacted me, visited me when I was in the womb when my mother was pregnant.
Okay.
And yes, and that my mom was pregnant for 9 months plus 5 more weeks, which is like 10 months and a week, something like that, which is unheard of. They would induce that labor today. They would not let it go that long because it was potentially dangerous, right? And so supposedly the Anunnaki did something to me. They either altered my DNA or added to it or whatever. They did something. And that's why I am who I am today. And that's why I believe that I have this connection with the Anunnaki. And I told you, I believe that a lot of the biblical figures are Anunnaki, and they did that on purpose. And that every other year, so they would implant me also. They would implant me. So every other year they would come back and swap out the old plant, put in a new plant. So when I was 1, 3, 5, so every other year up until I was about 13, and then they took a few years off. And then once I get through part of my adolescence, they start again at 17, 19, 21, 23. And this is at least what came out in the regression. Now, can I prove that? Absolutely not. I cannot prove that. But that's what came out. And what's interesting is the same thing happened to my brother 2.5 years later. And so where I got the spirituality, I got the psychic abilities, the mediumship, okay, the spiritual healing, as I'm a very powerful Reiki master. My brother was being scouted by the Olympics for weightlifting in high school. And I mean, he could beat up 3 to 4 guys at the same time and just incredibly monstrously strong, powerful like Hercules. And when he went to college, he scored higher than anybody in the 80-year history of the university on some aptitude test. So where I got the spirituality, he got the brains and the bronze.
Okay.
And that's what came out among a lot of other things.
And that was,
regression.
did that surprise you?
No, not at all.
No. So when she said this is what you've been saying while you're under kind of thing, it made sense to you when she explained that to you.
Well, I was recording it too.
Okay.
I was recording it on my computer, and she encouraged me to do so.
Yep.
And a lot of them will tell you, make sure you record this, and I did. And so I remembered most of it. I did. But then I had to go back and listen to it to really understand it, for it to really soak in.
Yep.
And like I said, I'm laying on the table thinking, man, this is a bunch of baloney. And the next thing you know, it starts to pour out of me. And
Yeah.
the things that have happened to me in my life, how I'm here in Sedona now, with what I do for a living, in my mind, it's just the most incredible blessing I could have ever prayed to have. I could not be more blessed. My former employer, she told me to be very grateful for what you do, John, because nobody in the world has the kind of job that you do.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. No, what it makes me think of, like you just used the word baloney there. I mean, we had somebody come on the live chat a little while back. They've disappeared now. We've got a few people. We've got Mary Ann. She's lovely. She's enjoying it. We've got Anne Dessert. We've got Mariella. We've got Scott. We've got somebody else that's new to the stream. Dankashi says it's a cool stream. And then we had somebody else come on called Bozo the Clown, saying that we're both cuckoo. That we both need to go to a mental institution. Yeah, this is what I would posit. Right, there are people around the world that believe in God. Okay, no one says, "Oh, you believe in God, you should go to a mental institution." They believe in God. They believe in angels. They believe in a virgin birth. They believe in a guy called Jesus that walked on water and fed thousands of people with a few fish and loaves, who died and was resurrected and went to heaven and is coming back in the future to judge people. You've then got other billions of people that believe in Muhammad, yeah, and all the sort of miraculous things surrounding that. These are things that, because of religion, they just tend to be. I mean, you've got your atheists that will say, "Oh, that's ridiculous," but there's so many people that are religious that believe these things, and they're not normally told you should be in a mental asylum because you believe in God and angels, because it's so much part of our sort of experience as humans that there are gods and angels and the Bible and all these sort of things, whether it's true or not. So why should believing in entities that are extraterrestrial, off-world, why should that be crazy?
Yeah, very astute observation. Yes. So when you got spooks, infiltrating the chat, the way I look at it is it's flattery.
Yeah.
It's flattery. It meant enough to them to have to say something.
Oh, and they've said it all in capital letters.
Yeah, how are we supposed to take Bozo the Clown seriously? But we're glad that it was enough to make you want to pay attention. And maybe we are crazy. Maybe you are too. Who really cares?
No. Here's the thing. I've just got a feeling within me that there is something in this idea that Yahweh is an alien, interdimensional beings. Something in that source. Manifestations of source, the fact that we've got a higher self that we can connect with. I think what would really kind of clinch it for me at the moment, a lot of these things for me are purely a mental academic exercise where I've kind of logically thought things through or tried to and come up with some of these ideas. What would really do it for me is if I actually had an actual experience. So if I saw a UFO, if I was taken by aliens, there's certain things that I'm going to start doing soon. Like I know you talk on your website about doing breath work. On Sunday, I'm actually going to a session for breath work and some of that sound bath stuff that you were talking about. I'm doing some of that on Sunday. Shamanic journeys. You take people on shamanic journeys. They're the ones with the cacao, aren't they?
No, I don't do ayahuasca or anything like that.
Okay.
Can you connect deeper with that? I mean, yeah. I mean, in your own mind, maybe you can. To me, it's a crutch. But somebody like Graham Hancock has done it over 100 times.
Yeah.
And he's world famous for his archaeology. He believes the Ark of the Covenant is in Aksum, Ethiopia.
Mm-hmm.
So does Eric Von Daniken. But he's
brilliant.
A big proponent of ayahuasca.
Yeah.
And I've never done it. I'm kind of afraid to do it, to be quite honest with you. And if you're afraid to do it, I'm
Yeah,
done with drugs. I'm too old to do drugs
yeah. Well,
Plenty-
Andy Grant,
but
a friend of mine called Andy, came on the show a while back. He did the cacao thing, and another guy called Mason Kerr. Both reported similar sort of experiences where they felt at one with everything. Even the forest that Andy was in, he felt like he blended into the trees and actually became a tree. And they had these very deep sort of visions of like their ancestors, and even a feeling that the people that they were seeing were actually themselves, past selves. I mean, that's this whole sort of idea of kind of oneness. And I know through your website you do guided meditation to connect with your guides. You do the Reiki, don't you?
I'm a master instructor, yes.
See, again, Reiki, the things that I do believe to be true, there's no logical reason why I couldn't add Reiki to the list of things that I believe to be true. But I think that's something that I would have to experience myself.
I agree with you. So it was a number of years ago, and I had a girlfriend here in Sedona, and we're on vacation. And it was the first time we'd been in a hotel room together, whatever. And she's laying on the bed, and she's like, "I'm going to put you to the test. I want to see if you're full of it or not," basically.
With the Reiki.
With the Reiki. And if you really can do it, especially with a man working with a woman, okay, you don't want to touch them.
No.
You don't want to. You
it's
want
about
to,
the energy, isn't it?
You should be able to scan their body just by running your hand over their body, nothing physical, and see what you feel, if you even feel anything at all. So I started her head, and her head felt pretty clear. She's very spiritual. So these channels, her channel to the creator, her Stargate to the cosmos, that all felt very clear. So then I get into here, and I'm like, there's something wrong with this chakra. And she said, "Well, what is it?" I'm like, "I don't know. I just, my hand stopped there. I could feel something." And she said, "Well, I used to smoke cigarettes for like 30 years, and I had to quit because I was starting to develop the beginning stages of emphysema." I'm like, "Wow. Okay." And then I'm like, "Well, now it's easy to conclude that you probably have something with your lungs, but I'm going to just say I feel something with your lungs also. But that's easy to put that together. So don't even give me credit for that." So then I go down to her visceral, I go to her stomach, but more her anatomy for reproduction. And she's in her 50s. So, it's easy to conclude that she can't have babies. And I said, "You can't have babies." She's like, "Well, yeah, I'm 50. And she's like, "But why?" And I said, "Well, you have your tubes tied." She's like, "Yes, but that's predictable too." And I said, "You know what? You're right." And she said, "Well, what else?" And this is the part I got wrong. I'm like, I don't know. So I'm not going to say I got it wrong. I just didn't get it. She said, "I had a full hysterectomy." Now that I did not catch. But then I'm like, I'm feeling on her sides of her stomach without touching her. I'm like, "You had a splenectomy and an appendectomy." And that was the kicker for her. She's like, "How could you have possibly known that?" I'm like, "I don't know. I mean, I can make something up right now. I don't know. I'm running my hands over your body." There's a couple things, especially with women. Women very often have issues in their visceral, in their stomach, or that anatomy, but I nailed a couple things. And then the rest of her body felt clear to me. But when I said the splenectomy and appendectomy, that's pretty darn specific.
That's what nailed it. Yeah. I think at some point I might have to have a Reiki session to just kind of, give me the feeling whether or not I actually do believe that or not. I'm not dismissing it by any means, because, like I say, the other things that I believe in, aliens, ET, visitations, genetic engineering, interdimensions, they're all pretty wow. So I mean, adding Reiki to the list isn't gonna. There was a couple of others. You do chakra chimney sweeping. I thought that was brilliant. We had Sasha Graham on the show the other week, and she was talking about how to unblock chakras, and I said, "Oh, it sounds a little bit like when you have a blocked toilet and you get the plunger out." And we had a bit of
brilliant metaphor.
Yeah, we had a bit of a laugh on that, and then I came on your website and read that you referred to it as chimney sweeping.
Chimney sweep.
Yeah. So literally, you're sweeping out the unblocking things.
Yeah, and so your
Yeah.
chakras spin. And so this is very interesting. I can take a pendulum and hold it in front of a male or a female,
Yep.
doesn't really matter. And then for males, your root chakra will spin clockwise.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go up to your sacral, spin counterclockwise. I'm sorry, yeah, counterclockwise. And then up to your solar plexus, right? It's going to go clockwise. And so it's clockwise, counterclockwise, all the way up and down your chimney,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I'll have the pendulum, and if it doesn't spin easily, then I know there's blockages there. And sometimes it won't spin at all. And sometimes it will spin the opposite way that it's supposed to. Now, for women, it's the exact opposite. For their root, it's going to go counterclockwise, then clockwise, and counterclockwise, all the way up and down. But what I learned and that I was doing wrong when I first moved here, and yes, it's effective, but what I learned is you start at the heart and then you go from there. Go from the heart and go up, go from the heart and go down, and go up and go down until you cover all 7 of them. And when I started doing that, it was more effective. And I can actually do a psychic reading on you. I'm not trying to do your future, but I can tell you things about who you are.
Yep.
So I do a lot of retreats, and they're mostly with women. I work well with women, but I'll do that with them. Very appropriate. I don't touch them or anything. I just do the chimney sweep with the pendulum and show them where they have their blockages. And 9 times out of 10, they agree with everything I say. Not always, but 90% is a pretty good clip, right? And I help them to break that up. And so then I'm like, and I ask, is it okay to work on you? If it is, then, and usually right back in here, because this is like a super highway between your head and then your back, all your motor nerve functions, all your tendons, ligaments, your spine, everything else. And your adrenals also connects between your brain and the rest of your body. And so I'll start to work on that. That's
quite
quite
an amazing machine when you describe it like that, with the nerves and the energy points and so on. Just something you mentioned there, a couple of things that my brain goes off on little tangents. First thing, one thing I've noticed, I've not got any statistics to back this up, but it seems to me that women in general seem to be more spiritual than us guys. I know on certainly on the social media, it tends to be mostly women that follow me on threads and that kind of thing, and they're posting things about their horoscopes and their chakras and their meditation sessions and all this kind of thing. The guys, not so much. I don't know if you've noticed that women tend to be more spiritual.
I totally agree with you. And let me tell you why. So I do vortex tours. I call them spiritual vortex tours. And I'll take them out to the vortexes here in Sedona, which are very real and very powerful.
What is a vortex?
Okay, so that's a long story, but I'll try and abbreviate it as much as possible. So the Earth consists of ley lines, and these are the grid lines of the Earth. Spell Ley as opposed to Lay.
Yep.
And this is true around the world, right? And then they're charged by the Earth's energy. So they're either electric or magnetic. But where the electric and magnetic lines cross, you have electromagnetic energy. And clean electromagnetic energy, which is created from the Earth, is healthy to the human body. And we are electromagnetic beings in that we think thoughts, which creates electrical impulses, which you can measure with an electroscope. And then the water in our body and the iron in our blood is magnetic. So you take an electromagnetic being like a human or even an animal to an electromagnetic vortex. You're going to have a supernatural and physiological effect whether you get it or not. And then you couple that with the fact that Sedona's red rocks are full of quartz crystal. So very often spiritual healers will use crystal in their healing modalities, and crystals have consciousness too, that's for sure. And then pair that with the fact that we have mineral rich artesian mountain spring water that flows through aquifers and rivers underneath and through the vortexes. And it ramps up the conductivity, just like throwing a toaster into a bathtub. It's the same kind of exaggerated example of how the vortex energy is very real here. So my former employer, let's call her Michelle, she survived cancer 7 times. And she will tell you It's because of the vortex energy here. And so when I first started working for her, she paid for me to go on tours with Navajos so that they could teach me the way of the land, how to connect with the spirit here, how to connect with the consciousness here, and how to connect with the vortexes here. So I've had scientists come on my tours, and pretty much every one of them was like, this is a bunch of bull. And, you know, as I do what I do, I'm like, you know, just out of sake of argument and for my own peace of mind, I want to make sure I'm not selling snake oil here, you know? So we went out to where I thought, they're like, where do you think the vortexes are? So I took them to a bunch of them, and they had what you call a tri-field magnetometer. You ever heard of a tri-field magnetometer? Okay, so it measures 4 things. It measures electric energy, magnetic energy, electromagnetic energy. That's 3 different things. And then also microwaves. Okay, so 4 different things. So we go to one of the vortexes out here, and I said, I believe this is one of the spots. It starts to peak. We walk away, it stops. And then I said, I believe that there's another spot here. Bam, bam, bam. It peaks again. We walk away, it stops. And then I said, I believe there's another spot here. And so bam, 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 it peaks out, we walk away, it stops. And one of those places, I call it the vortex tree, and specifically the junipers, not so much the pines or the cypress or spruce, but the junipers, if they're in a high concentration of that spinning vortex energy, because that's what vortex means, centripetal force and rotational inertia of something that's spinning, it creates energy.
Is it almost like the Earth's chakras?
Yeah, you could go there. You could say that too. But I'll take them up to this tree. And I always ask the women first. And to test myself as a psychic, I always say, you know, I at least think I'm psychic. And I put myself on the spot. And I'm like, I'm going to pick one of you to see if you can feel this tree without touching it. That's the whole trick, is to not touch the tree, but to get close to the tree. And these are energy centers, our hands are. You know, I mean, I can just feel tingling in my hands just by putting my hands near one another. But if you get close to this one specific tree, in certain spots, you can feel the energy. And women feel it more than men do, to your point. And I almost always, it's a woman. I rarely pick out a man. So the other day, yesterday, I had 14 people, and there was this lady, and just something told me to pick her, put myself on the spot. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I've been wrong twice in 6 years, and that's it. I've been right every other time. And she goes up, and it took her a minute. I was like, oh God, I hope she's not, I hope she's feeling something. But she wasn't saying anything. Next thing you know, she's bawling, she's crying, and she felt so bad and so ashamed. And I'm like, I'm like hugging her now. I'm like, it's okay. This is a beautiful thing. You felt that vortex energy. There are elemental spirits in water. What's coming out of your eyes? Tears. So these elemental spirits are pouring out of your body, and it's a beautiful thing. Next thing you know, the whole family, because it was a family of 14 people, they're all feeling the tree, and almost all the women felt it, and only one of the men felt it.
Yeah, that's interesting. Couple of things you said there that really resonated. My partner, Mariella, is particularly in tune with these kind of things. She can feel changes in the planetary alignments and the moon, and she can feel the energy in crystals. Ever since she's been a little girl, she's felt the energy in crystals, particularly rose quartz. She feels a really strong energy with rose quartz.
I agree with her.
And that makes sense. When you've got I've got a few little bits of crystal up here. If you can get a little bit of it, because we use quartz to do things like clocks and watches and computers and things because of the frequency. If you've got a stonking great big, mountain made up of quartz crystal, that's going to be putting out some detectable energy.
Oh, and you can measure it too.
You can measure it.
There's a mountain like not even a mile from my house. It's called Thunder Mountain. It's on the 7 chakras of Sedona. I mean, I have maps of this where you can measure it through all these different instruments, right? And it's full of crystal. And then the History Channel came here last year and did a documentary on our Stargate that we have here called Bradshaw Ranch. And they found the tunnel system, and the tunnel system goes right by Thunder Mountain, which is theoretically or supposedly full of crystal. And that all of Sedona is a bunch of military bases. They're what you call DUMs. You ever heard of a DUM before? deep underground military
Oh,
base.
yeah, like in the Stargate, like the Cheyenne Mountain one in Stargate.
Yes. And this
Yeah, yeah.
team of scientists, headed up by former CIA operative
Mm.
Andy Bustamante, they had a team of scientists and they all had their own specific discipline that they were expert at and put it all together. They found the tunnel system. They just straight up found it. And then where they found the Stargate at Bradshaw Ranch, they found a 1.6 gigahertz signal not coming from behind it or through it, but coming down from it to Earth. And 1.6 gigahertz is exclusively recognized as an interstellar communications channel and frequency
Mm.
for covert military. So it's like, what the heck are they doing here? Where does this signal come from? Is it the military doing it? Is something else doing it? I don't know. But the tunnel system goes right underneath that. Okay. And then there's this patch of uranium there. Figure that, right? And then there's radon coming off of it. So where there is uranium, which you know you can make nuclear weapons out of, radon is a byproduct of it. And they were able to find this. They're all able to find this through science. And I've been talking about this stuff for years.
Yeah.
And nobody really understood it. And I was right the whole time.
Yeah.
And now that History Channel is doing these documentaries, I talk about it even more than ever before.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. I think it was it Faraday when he did his first demonstration of electromagnetic energy. He had the needle at one end of the desk, and he had a coil with a pole running through it at the other end with no connection, and he moved it this end, and then the needle went at that end, and everyone thought this is magic. And then things like X-rays being discovered, and like you say, you know, the radioactive materials being discovered, that they're giving off energy all the time. Mm-hmm. You know, that's got to be the case, not just with, you know, things like uranium, but right down to, you know, just everyday kind of matter is giving off radiation all the time, because the atoms are decaying as the electrons and what have you move around. I guess some people are perhaps a little bit more sensitive to these things, or can be trained to be more sensitive. I don't know. Like my partner is really sensitive. She really feels things. Me, not so much.
Well, that's common. It's common in any relationship with a man and a woman that the man is more pragmatic, the woman is more empathic, more sensitive to energy. I like to say that, you know, I embrace my masculine and feminine energy.
Yeah.
It's not a weird thing. It's not a weird thing at all.
No, it's not a weird thing.
If anything, it makes me more in touch with what is actually going on out there.
Yeah.
And makes me better at what I do.
Yeah.
You know,
I think that's absolutely brilliant, John. Just to kind of tie the show up, just this last little bit, if I could ask you, always a big question that I ask, what happens when we die? So when this body of Daniel Torridon dies, what's going to happen? Do I go to heaven? Do I go to hell? Do I just not wake up? What?
Brilliant question. So, this is a tough one here, but so what I believe is that if you gave your soul to an extraterrestrial, that you're going to go into their false afterlife matrix. So how many movies out there have you seen where these demons or whatever collect people's souls? This is a very, very old concept, which goes back thousands upon thousands of years. And you pray to these gods that you don't know any better. You think that they're aliens. At least a fraction of your soul, I believe, is going to go there.
What about if, I understand that from the point of view, I was a Jehovah's Witness for 50 years, and I spent all my time giving my prayer energy to this Yahweh, who was an alien all the time. What about, like, now I don't do that. I don't pray to Yahweh, and I try not to think about him. And I'm not religious. Is there a chance that I won't necessarily have to go through that sort of layer of, you know, lower gods before I get back to source? Or
what I believe is that it's going to be the current status quo within your consciousness and your pantheon of selves.
Good.
So now we're going to base it on what you believe when you pass.
Yeah.
At least that's what I would think in my estimation.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the Egyptians believed your soul splintered into like all these different fractals, like upwards of 10. One was the Ba and one was the Ka. And the Ba would go to the other side, and that was your soul. And the Ka was the spirit that would stay with your body.
I'm writing
That's
that down. Ba and Cha.
and Ka.
A
Ba
car.
and
I'm
Ka.
going to go and have a research on that. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, and so my mom told me this a long time ago. I was starting to question religion. I'm like, if this is God, how come he's murdering children? And I'm asking these questions as a kid, just going to Sunday school.
Mm.
I was asking the right questions. And how do you, as a mom who, doesn't really believe in church, but she's doing it because my dad is a political figure, right?
Yep.
How do you explain this to your kids who are like 6 and 7 years old? And so what she told me, she said, when you die, look for your oversoul, because your oversoul has been through that wash. Your oversoul has been through that cyclical cycle of going through these creator God aliens, false afterlife matrices. They have.
So in other words, we basically, however we reason in this life, like if I believe in Jesus, and that's my focus, when I die, that's kind of the experience I'm going to get. If I'm a Buddhist, that's the kind of experience I'm going to get. If I'm giving my soul to Yahweh, or if I'm a Satanist, or that's kind of going to carry on with my energy when this body dies.
That's what I believe. And so my dad's brother, back in, I believe, 2011, he died. And so I fly from Florida. It's my brother and I. We fly to Houston and then rent a car and drive straight to a wake, which just as sad as it could be, of course. And so, I'm a medium. I can see spirits. So it was pretty overwhelming. My dad's sitting next to the casket, shaking people's hands. Everybody's crying. And at some point, it was overwhelming to me. And I'm like, I need to go sit in one of the pews and just try and get this out of my head. So I'm sitting there and I can see my uncle's, his soul, or at least I thought I saw his soul over his casket. And I'm like, wow. And he's trying to communicate with me. And then I'm like, wait. There's too many people. There's like 300 people. He was a respected businessman in this part of East Texas. There's tons of people there. There's too much going on for me to focus on just one thing. And so I'm like, just come to me when there's no one else around. So go to bed that night, wake up in the hotel room, boom, right over my bed. There's my uncle. And he says to me, I feel so stupid. And I'm like, why would you say that? And he said, my grandparents were there on the other side waiting for him. And he said, I had no idea I'd been praying to aliens my whole life. And my mama and papa from East Texas were there to escort him around Yahweh's false afterlife matrix and take him to source.
Take him back to source. That is really very good. Actually, you've got me thinking on a lot of things here. So, as I understand it, this idea that there's different dimensional levels of us, down to this sort of base level that I'm at this moment, the same way as some of that can filter down the interdimensional levels to my experience here. I guess when I die, it's basically just like I'm peeling off that layer. And I'm just going back up a level. So if I've spent my entire life as a human worshipping Yahweh, that's going to have some knock-on effect up the dimensional tree kind of thing. So when I go up a level and I'm a whatever fifth dimensional being, I may take some of that with me.
You might. These are all things there's no way to prove anything. So we can just speculate and, just so your heart's in the right place, with the right intentions, whether I'm right or not.
Yeah. But I think it's safe to say don't pray to aliens.
That is the lesson.
That's our lesson today.
During this episode. Peel back that onion.
Yeah, stop praying to aliens. Why don't you? That's been absolutely brilliant, John. So if you could just hang on for a second, I'm just going to wrap the show up and play the outro music, and then I'll just come back to you. But a genuine thank you to you for that today, John. That's been absolutely brilliant. Really good conversation, and I've learnt some new things. And some of the things that you've said have fitted in with what I was already kind of edging towards. So that's really good.
Well, highest compliment to you, because a lot of people, they don't know the right questions to ask me. and it's not a knock on them. It's just you were already open to these concepts in the first place. And I think I might have helped fill in a couple blanks for you.
Absolutely brilliant. Yeah, you've actually answered some questions there, especially with that sort of interdimensional or multi-dimensional level. So that's been fantastic. Reverend John, thank you very, very much there. So that's been Reverend John on John Polk on our show today, talking all about Yahweh being an alien, and indeed pretty much everything's an alien. Angels, angels.
Hey.
Yeah, I'm an alien. Somewhere along the line, UFOs and what happens when we die. That's fantastic. So if you want to check out Reverend John's book, it's entitled Yahweh, the Biblical God is an Alien. I'll leave a link to that in the description on this video. Also, if you want to check out Reverend John's Twitter feed, that is at Reverend Polk, Polk, and his website, John Polk Tours, if you want to go and see some guaranteed alien encounters with the UFOs and ghost hunting or anything like that. So what do you think, people? Do you think Reverend John Polk is on to something, or do you think me and John need sending to a mental assignment? Is Yahweh an alien? Are angels aliens? Do we inhabit multiple bodies all at the same time? Do UFOs exist? And what happens when we die? As always, I shall let you leave your comments and your questions for me or the Reverend, and we will try and get back to you with an answer. So if you enjoyed the show, it'd be awesome if you could just like and subscribe and click that little bell so that you can be notified when we have other shows like this. So that's all from me this time and from Reverend John Polk. Stay curious. Bye for now.